Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast with Phil Graham. We help you master Facebook ads and give you an unfair advantage over your competition. Are you ready? Let's go.
What's up, podcast family? Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast, episode 445. Phil Graham here. Today, we're going to talk about the smart way to run Facebook and Instagram ads on a small budget. This is one of the most common questions I get. How do you run ads when your budget is small? And a small budget means different things to different people, different amounts. But unless you have a really large budget, this episode is for you. For those of you that do have a really large budget, I'll be doing another episode for you. So don't worry, I got you covered as well. But today, it's all about how to use your budget as wisely as possible and trying to help you guys steer clear of mistakes that could hold you back. So it is November 18th. How crazy is that? Thanksgiving is next week. I definitely love this time of year, although I have to say my almond nog budget probably rivals a few smaller Facebook ad budgets out there right now. Yes, almond nog is better than eggnog. I'm going on record saying that. I love it. But today we're going to talk about running Facebook ads on a small budget. Now, before we jump into that, I briefly wanted to mention, hey, if you guys are looking for some help with your ads, there's really two key ways that I can help you. It's either one, me running the ads for you, or two, me teaching you or your team how to run them yourselves. And so for either one of those things, if you're interested, you want to find out more, maybe connect on a short Zoom call, just go to my website, philgrahamdigital.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital, and I would love to connect with you. I want to keep this episode short, sweet, full of value, and very actionable for you guys. So let's jump right into the first point, really spending smart when you have a small budget. And the first point is mindset and strategy are so important. You don't always have to have a big budget to succeed, but you definitely need a smart strategy. The goal should be data, not randomness when you're running ads. And so you can get data with a small budget. You can test, you can learn, you can create, and you can build based off of what you learn. So mindset-wise and strategy-wise, especially if it's early on, you want to try and think of it as investing in information and trying to learn something from your ad spend every single day or every single week to where each dollar teaches you something. Now, there are different variables and exceptions based off of how long you've been running ads and what's going on. But in general, especially on smaller budgets, you really got to go strong on investing in information, using that information and using that data to make smarter decisions. So you're doing things based off of that strategy, not just randomly running ads. And a little pro tip for you guys, if you've been listening for any length of time, you've probably heard this, but it's so important. Don't judge your campaign or your ads by a couple days of results. Look for patterns. Give it some time to work, not just one-off things or just quick things, because sometimes great ads take a little bit of time to kick in. So let's talk about point number two. I recommend with a small budget, you start pretty narrow and very focused. So what I recommend and what I do, I don't split a small budget across a bunch of ad sets. Let's say you were spending $50 a day. I'm not going to do a bunch of $5 ad sets or $2.50 ad sets. You're spreading yourself way too thin in a lot of situations if you're doing that. So what I would do with a small budget, especially if you're $50 a day or less, I would focus on one specific primary campaign, one main audience, and one theme for your creatives. Because with a small budget, you can't afford to test everything at once. You can still test everything, just not at the same time. So you want to pick what you think is best and commit to it for a few weeks. Use that data, and then after that amount of time, based off of what the data is telling you, you'll be able to decide what you should change and test next. But start very focused and don't spread yourself too thin. Point number three is actually kind of interesting because there's really two different ways you can go with this. You can test audiences or you can test creatives. If you had a larger budget, you could test both at the same time and run a bunch of stuff. But typically, with smaller budgets, You got to pick one or the other. Now, what I recommend, and it's tough, I'd have to see your account and know your exact situation to tell you which one is right for you. But I think for a lot of people listening, the overall general opinion I would give is to start with your creatives and use kind of a larger, broad audience. Now, this could go wrong because sometimes even the Facebook AI audiences don't do a great job. Other times they do. So it's not like foolproof. Nothing is. But if I had to pick one without knowing your account, I would say start with testing a creative or a couple different creatives with a small budget. And I think that's definitely the way to go. And you can test videos, you can test images, you can test ad copy, including hooks. And I think that's a great way to start. Don't try and test too many different things. And if you're not sure about audiences or creatives, start testing creatives. So with a small budget, do the best possible creatives you can get with great ad copy, a great hook, and great storytelling. And that can give you some great data to work with for what to do next. So tip number 4 is to optimize your ads by subtraction, not addition, meaning you don't want to add too many things too quickly. You want to actually turn off what's not working first. So subtract, don't add. So you might be running an ad, and let's say it's not working. Well, how do you know why it's not working? Most of you won't know that until you dig in some. So let's say you've got an audience you're working with and you've got an image ad you're testing with some ad copy. If you just turn it all off and do something completely different, you don't know why it didn't work. It could have been the audience, it could have been the image, it could have been the ad copy, it could have been any number of things. So in that scenario, what I would do is I would test one thing. I wouldn't just turn it all off. I would change something. Maybe if it's an image, I would change it to a video and keep everything else the same and see if that improved results. If it didn't, then I might try a different hook or a different headline. If that didn't work, then I might start looking at the audience. But I would be optimizing by subtracting one thing at a time to see if I can identify the reason it wasn't working. And then I would focus any remaining budget I had on any proven winners if you have some. And if you don't, the process I just described is how you can start trying to find winners that will eventually be proven winners for you guys. And I would definitely avoid the temptation to change your ads on a regular basis, daily, or even every couple days. You need some stability to let the algorithm learn and work for you. So don't change it too quickly unless you have a huge budget. And then my last point today is about scaling. So you want to be careful with scaling. When you have a winner, when it's starting to do well and it's on a small budget, there's a couple different ways you could scale it. There's actually many different ways. But in terms of budget-wise, you could just double the budget overnight, or you could kind of step up 10, 20% every few days. I've done both. Sometimes one way works better. Sometimes another way works better. And there's a lot of different variables that can affect that. But if I were to give general advice for you guys without knowing your actual exact account, if I had to pick one way, I typically would pick the way where you're stepping up your budget maybe 20% every few days instead of doubling it overnight. There are times that I will double it in certain situations, but again, I have to give advice for everyone without seeing their accounts. So that's how I would recommend you guys scale. Is just scale very carefully, not too much, too quick. So you guys remember, in summary, a small budget doesn't always have to mean small results. It is possible to succeed with a smart strategy and using data to make smart decisions. Is it guaranteed? Of course not. Anybody who tells you it's guaranteed, it's probably a scammer, and you probably want to run the other way. So I hope this was super helpful. This is how I would recommend getting the most out of a small budget. I'll have more on this in future episodes because there's a lot more we can talk about. And as always, just a reminder, it's always important to point out that every business is unique. Results can vary. There's no guaranteed outcomes. So always keep that in mind. But next week, make sure you guys listen because I'm going to be talking about how I test Facebook ads without what I would consider wasting money. So make sure you guys check that out. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful week. Episode 445 is in the books, and I will talk to you on next week's episode. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share this with all your friends. For show notes, more tips, and to learn more about Phil, please visit philgrahamdigital.com/podcast.